welcome. My name is Meg Honey, and I am so proud to serve as tonight's moderator for our event. I want to start by first thanking the Walnut Creek Library's Foundation, the Walnut Creek Library Foundation's Board of Directors, an incredibly dedicated group of library supporters. Could our foundation board members raise their hand so that we can thank you for all of your amazing work? Thank you. On behalf of the Walnut Creek Library Foundation, it is my pleasure to welcome you to Live from the Library, a series of free evening programs with authors, scholars, community leaders, entertainers, and tonight, a conversation with author Kevin Smokler about his new book, Break the Frame. I'd like to thank the Live from the Library season sponsors, Minutemen Press of Lafayette and the Friends of the Walnut Creek Library. And I also want to thank each of you for your support. Many of you here tonight donate to the Library Foundation and are key to the Foundation's ability to offer free programs like this one. Thank you so much for your support. If you would like to donate to our library, envelopes are in the lobby, and we have a tip jar in the back with the refreshments, and you can also speak to any one of the board members present tonight. A quick show of hands, how many of you are newcomers to a Live from the Library event? We're gonna give you a round of applause. Welcome. I'm also so happy that we have some younger audience members with us tonight too, which is wonderful. Yay. Our live series takes a break for our Amazing Authors Gala, which will be held here at the library on Saturday, April 25th. And thank you to our incredible guest tonight, Mr. Smokler. He will be one of the featured authors at the gala. The gala is a beloved annual event that brings together authors and supporters for a night of conversation that includes cocktails, a silent auction, a wine raffle, and a gorgeous sit-down dinner with an author. Tickets are on sale at wclibrary.org. We have one program remaining in our current series. The Eugene O'Neill Foundation will present on June 9th, and there will be more to come on that program after the gala. And then one final housekeeping note. The library closes at 8 p.m., but please do not be alarmed. Everyone will still be able to exit when the program ends. You are not trapped here all evening, I promise. This evening, we are thrilled to welcome author Kevin Smokler for a discussion about his new book, Break the Frame, Conversation with Women Filmmakers. Kevin is a writer, documentary filmmaker, and event host focused on the relationships as human beings with pop culture. Break the Frame contains 24 career retrospective conversations with directors behind box office phenomenon like Captain Marvel, Oscar winners like Free Solo, and the filmmakers who launched the careers of actors such as America Ferrera, Paul Rudd, Ryan Gosling, and Jennifer Lawrence. His previous book, Brat Pack America, is a love letter to teen movies of the 1980s and is incredible. Absolutely read it. His 2013 essay collection, Practical Classics, is a 50-book attempt to reread one's high school reading list as an adult. Kevin's feature-length documentary film, Vinyl Nation, on the American Renaissance of the vinyl record, won 10 awards and screened at 50 film festivals worldwide. His new documentary, Middle Grounds, about coffee shops and civic dialogue, is on the film festival circuit. In early 2026, he and his partner, Christopher Boone, were selected to direct and produce a feature-length documentary about San Francisco's legendary live music venue, the Bottom of the Hill. We're so excited to meet Kevin Smokler. I promise I'm just going to say a couple words about Break the Frame. There are books that arrive at exactly the right moment, not just the right moment in a career or reading life, but the right moment in history. And for me, Break the Frame is one of those books. And you can see that I really got into my reading. We are living through a time when women's stories are being questioned, when hard-won rights feel fragile, and when the contributions of women to our culture are too easily overlooked or erased. In that context, reading Kevin Smokler's thoughtful, generous portraits of women filmmakers doesn't just feel interesting, it feels necessary. It feels like an act of restoration. To spend time with the work of Amy Heckerling, a director who understood long before the culture caught up that teenagers' inner lives were worthy of the grandest cinematic treatment, is to be reminded what visionary storytelling looks like. Fast Times at Ridgemont High and Clueless aren't just beloved comedies. They are documents of the high school experience, told with wit, precision, and profound humanity. As if we could ever forget Cher Horowitz's passionately unprepared speeches in her public speaking class, or the very moment when Jeff Spicoli ordered pizza in the middle of his US history teacher's lesson on the Platt Amendment. And then there's Dawn Porter, whose documentary work plants a camera in the middle of truth and refuses to look away. She shares in her interview with Kevin about her process to create some of the most moving and impactful films about significant historical events. Rise Again, Tulsa and the Red Summer, John Lewis, Good Trouble, Bobby Kennedy for President, The Way I See It about Chief White House photographer Pete Souza, and 37 Words, the inspiring story of Title IX, among others. Porter's films don't just inform, they insist. They insist that these stories matter, that these lives matter, that we are obligated to bear witness. Reading about these women and all of the filmmakers that Kevin has brought to life in this book felt affirming, it felt inspiring, and in many ways it felt healing. Please join me in warmly welcoming the author of a book I genuinely believe we need right now, Kevin Smokler. I feel like it is always a moderator's number one job not to like gush over the guest, to be really pulled together and professional. And I told Kevin I wasn't going to be weepy, and then I got a little weepy thinking about what this book means in this exact moment. We are so happy that you are here.
Thank you, and thank you, everyone. Meg and I have been friends for about a decade, so I think a little weeping is okay.
And it's a friendship that was fostered when he was here at the Walnut Creek Library about his Brat Pack book. And so I feel so happy to still be connected and learning about all the great things that you are doing. We are going to get right into it. Kevin, your book's introduction is titled Bigger and Louder Than Silence. What does this phrase mean to you, and how did it shape the spirit of the conversations that you sought out?
I always like to start an introduction with a story, because to me it's a lot more interesting than what the sort of boring task that an introduction typically has to do, which is, hi everyone, thanks for opening this book. This is why I wrote it. And so you can pretty much cover that by having the word introduction on the top. So I like to start with a story, because I feel like that not only gets the reader in, but it sort of indicates why you chose to spend the time on this project in the first place. And the story I had here was actually a thing I did with a thing I was asked to do at New York Comic Con in 2016 with a couple of the directors that were featured in my Brat Pack book. And New York Comic Con had this idea that we were going to pay great tribute to these great women directors of that era. And so it was the world's easiest gig, because everybody at New York Comic Con is a big fan, and that's why they're there. And so you just ask a lot of softball questions, and the crowd is all super thrilled to be there, and the directors just told these fantastic stories, and I just had to sit there and listen and point to people when they had questions. It's a great excuse to spend a November weekend in New York. And then when Q&A started, a woman who was about 23, I stood up and identified herself as a first-year film student at NYU, and she looked at these two directors who had accomplished incredible things and great movies that you've all seen. And she said, I need to, and she said, in effect, I need to know if I'm wasting my time because I'm wondering, is there any room for me? Or are you guys it? Like, because the evidence is, the evidence in front of us is not good, that there's room for more women who make movies than, say, the two of you, or a few every year or every generation. And the two of them answered that question as gamely as they could, because I'm sure they've been asked it a lot. And then, as the moderator, my job was to say, next question, please, which I did. And nobody said anything. And the room was dead quiet. And I should have pointed to someone and said, you, or something like that, because it certainly wasn't my job to talk. But instead, I opened my big mouth, which is a liability of being Jewish and an oldest child, and I said, if we cannot do anything about who makes movies, we certainly can do something about who watches movies. And so, if you see Good Trouble by Dawn Porter, let's not kid ourselves that Dawn Porter fell from the sky, made Good Trouble, and then went back to the land of fairies from whence she came. There's probably a whole treasure trove of riches given to us by this amazing director named Dawn Porter. How many have we seen? If the answer is one, well, we know what next Saturday night looks like, don't we? And so I said, you see the name Dawn Porter, you go see that movie. You see the name Gina Prince Bythewood, you go see that movie. And then you tell all your friends about it. Because we keep getting told this lie, this filthy, disgusting lie, that movies made by women are some special interest group. Like movies made by salamanders or something like that. And
Yeah,
and how much more evidence?
Yes.
Any one of us could stand on one foot and be like, Bridesmaids, Barbie, Wuthering Heights, and just go on and on and on and on and be Clueless, Real Women Have Curves, Captain Marvel, blah, 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 blah. Half Nelson, the movie that made Ryan Gosling a celebrity, and you could just go like this. All evidence to the contrary. Yeah. So I felt like the metaphor, it's a very long answer to the question. I'm so sorry.
No, it's a great answer.
I basically what I said was, the silence is very real, and it feels very oppressive and punishing. And the answer is not to be buried by it, but to fill it and be loud. And so I thought that's what I was doing by writing this book.
Absolutely.
I said, not only are the directors going to speak for their own work, but I am going to engage with it and listen and make sure I ask good questions so they can speak about their work. And then it is all of our jobs, me included, to go see these movies and to talk about them and to say how great they are, because that is more. It doesn't seem like it, but that is more important than how much money a movie makes at the box office, whether it's in the first row of tiles on your streaming service, whether it wins awards, whether you see the posters all over town on your way to work or school or something like that. What is most important, what really is the difference between a movie succeeding or failing, is how many people are talking about it.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. That's why, Kevin, I loved at the end of your book too, like the framework that you present readers about. Here's how we take all of these rich interviews and all of these amazing insights about what these directors have created, and we are going to do something about it collectively. So again, I can't say enough about this work and how important it is. I want to talk a little bit more about your book structure and then get into some themes of like representation in the industry. You structured your book in the following sections: trailblazers, sages, documentarians,
directing in partnership, and the female future. How did you establish these categories? How did they emerge? And were there filmmakers that were like resistant to be put into any categories? Did they even know they were putting in, or did you just surprise them as the book was published?
Uh, I didn't give them a choice. Like, no. And the categories were essentially there for two reasons. One, um, a director who's made 10 movies and is in their 60s is at a very different point in their career and life than a director who's 35 and has made 2 movies. And so I thought that was an important, if we're talking about the experience, both artistically and on the job, because it is a job, I didn't think those 2 stories belonged together. So the the Trailblazers, the older directors who were in that section, were directing at a time when there were many fewer of them. There were many fewer women in the director's chair, in the union. There were fewer examples of themselves in the profession. So that was an important distinction for me too. It was also important, particularly now, because documentary is way more visible than when I was growing up. You kind of had to go to that kind of dusty classroom on the university campus on like a Sunday afternoon to see a documentary. When I was growing up, that's not the case anymore. So I felt like the people who made documentaries got their own section. And then I was really fascinated by the fact that there are many examples of men who direct in pairs. Hell, I belong to one of them. But often brothers who direct in pairs, and occasionally just people who found each other, like Chris and I, for example. But women directors have this very unique thing. I haven't found a pair of sisters who direct together, but I found 2 really interesting examples of husbands and wives who directed together, and so I thought that was amazing. The Free Solo, the Oscar-winning documentary, was made by a husband and wife team. And then the 2 women who made the RGB documentary that was nominated for an Oscar and then followed it up with a documentary about Julia Child and then another one about Gabby Gifford. They're just 2 people who worked in TV news and were actually, one is 10 years older than the other, and they just found each other and they liked each other and they just started working together. So directing pairs, I thought, was kind of a cool thing.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I am going to get to representation, but you mentioned something. Your book gives equal weight to full-length feature films, television, documentaries, and then maybe my favorite, music videos. MTV does not even exist anymore, and the music video, yes, there's a lot to be said about that. These are all valuable, vital sources that make statements and they launch careers. Did the women you interviewed think of those distinctions as meaningful, or is there something that unifies their storytelling regardless of format?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. For many of the directors, television is something they do in between feature film projects. Yes. And so, television is way more collaborative than motion pictures. Mm-hmm. There's a lot more people on the set. Television is largely a writer's medium. The people who are really driving the ship on television are the people who write the scripts. In movies, it's the person in the director's chair. Mm-hmm. So if you are a television director, you are really taking your marching orders from the writer's room. And mostly, when movie directors, like the kind in my book, go to direct television, they're directing a series that has been around for a little while. Mm-hmm. So they're kind of, joining school in junior year or something like that. And so they're entering a culture that already exists, a workplace that already exists, a very different experience than developing a movie from the very beginning. In the case of music videos, the example there's 2 examples that I love. One is that the great director Julie Dash, who was responsible for the criminally overlooked movie Daughters of the Dust, which was the visual inspiration for the Beyonce Lemonade album. Also, at some point in her career, when she was just off being fabulous and being Julie Dash, was asked to direct the Tracy Chapman Give Me One Reason music
Loved
video.
this part of your book and the choices of that music video.
Yeah,
Kathleen.
yeah, and it has these incredible colors and this incredible sort of dreamlike air that
Yeah.
that Lemonade has and that Daughters of the Dust has. And then of course Tamara Davis, who is the director arguably responsible for making Adam Sandler a movie star, um, directed 100 music videos before that's how she came to directing movies, including the one that gave us Hanson. You know, Umbop was a Tamara Davis creation. And if you look at like her most famous music videos, if you look at the Indigo Girls' Closer to Fine, or Sonic Youth's Cool Thing, or Tone Loc's Wild Thing, which is the one that made her famous, they all have the same quality of like this thing that is very, very unexpected in a music video, which is that what would be happening in front of the camera would be happening whether or not the director was there. Every one of them seems to catch musicians in these off moments where they're just like, they're not performing. They're actually just sort of being themselves. Bop is the most obvious example, where it's just it's like Hanson, like skateboarding and rollerblading and doing everything but being a band.
It's so
But-
peak 90s.
Yeah, it
like
is.
90s boyhood. I love
Right.
it. Yes.
It is. And like, yeah, and when they pitched it to her, she's like, "What do you want to do?" And the Hanson brothers were like, the youngest one was like 14, and he's like, "I want to drive a car." And they're like, "Well, we can't have you drive a car, but because you not licensed." So they like put him behind the wheel. They put him behind the wheel, which I think was on the other side of the car and was a fake wheel, and there's actually someone driving the car off screen. But yeah, it's like it's all like her timing was so good because she comes along at precisely the moment when preening and performing and being a celebrity is going out of fashion.
Yeah.
And so Tamara Davis's like offhanded way of capturing musicians as like people rather than superstars is it's what makes her, and it defines an entire generation of the way music was.
Absolutely. And again, I'm so glad that is part of this book too, that film, women in film, it's across many different mediums. Well, this is a great segue. Speaking of Indigo Girls, Closer to Fine, a song that got a beautiful like revisiting in the Barbie movie. In 2023, the year that the Barbie movie broke records, women directed only 12% of the top 250 films in America. Obviously, you have talked about our collective responsibility to amplify the work of women. But after speaking with your 24 directors, are there other like stubborn barriers that are keeping this number so low?
God, I want to ask something light before we get to that's a heavy question. One, do you get the sense that the hardest thing Greta Gerwig had to do in Barbie was convince the Indigo Girls to use that song? Like, I really do. And I have a feeling they were asked like 50 separate times, like, over the course of 30 years when that song came out, and they were just like, nah, it's not the right time. And then Barbie came along, and their first reaction was probably, nah, it's not the right time. And then I wouldn't be surprised if everything that went into that movie, Greta Gerwig put an undue amount of energy into convincing Emily Ray and Amy Saliers that they could use that song. Yes, many unseen barriers. Some of them are simply the nature of movie making right now, and this is a shame. I mean, because it is very hard to talk about movies just as a fan and what you are satisfied and dissatisfied with without like talking about the industry, which is frankly not that interesting. And I'm not like a variety reporter. I'm just someone who likes movies and takes them seriously and wants to share my love for them with everybody. I feel like the biggest problem, and this is, and I'm not sure this is a structural barrier that affects women directors specifically, but it is the biggest hindrance we as movie loving people have towards seeing more of the kind of movies that we want, which is there is no one direct way to find out what movies are out now. Anyone who is over the age of 40 will remember that you could go to a movie theater on Friday night and there would be 8 movies there, and you could be reasonably confident that that was it. Those were your choices. Those 8 movies. That seems paltry now. But the illusion of selection is really, really insidious, because the statistic I like to quote, which just makes my blood run cold, is that the number of movies on Netflix streaming is fewer than the inventory of a Blockbuster video. Think about that. Think about that. You are paying $20 a month for the privilege of having access to fewer movies than you got going to Blockbuster. Like 1/5 as few movies as you got when you went to Blockbuster. And by the way, going to Blockbuster cost you nothing. Like if you went in there and left, it was free. I mean, and maybe you stole some licorice on the way out. But so that is the really, really paltry experience that we are paying for, and they've convinced us to pay for it, because you look at those horizontal lines of titles scrolling by on Netflix or HBO Max or Hulu or anything else, and it just appears endless. You're like, oh, everything must be in here. Everything in the world. There is no movie on Netflix streaming that is older than 1972. That means no Wizard of Oz, no Fantasia, no Some Like It Hot, no It's a Wonderful Life, no any of that. So think about what we're paying for, and I think that really crappy circumstances is allowed to exist because we no longer have a way of being informed as to what are the available movies.
I am so sorry.
That's all right.
Over.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm actually gonna. Can you bring me my purse? I have a cough drop in there. I am so sorry, everybody. Thank you. Look at our audience. Let's hear it for our audience. Thank you. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Kevin, I'm going to have to sit with what you just shared, because that is not only a profound revelation, but yes, a barrier in how we just interact with content, or the content that we think we have access to when we don't. That is...
Yeah, so is it any wonder that when Dawn Porter comes along and says, I want to make a documentary, and by the way, the last 10 I made were fabulous and won all sorts of awards, and I belong in some Hall of Fame somewhere, someone, whoever holds the purse strings is going to ask them, is going to say, we can do that, we can give you $5 million for a documentary about Abigail Adams, and what happens then? What happens? It's on the first row of tiles on Netflix for 2 weeks, and then it disappears and nobody knows it's there. Like, minus the theatrical experience, which, by the way, like, the theatrical experience is coming back largely to address this very problem. Because
all my helpers, thank you.
Yeah. You can't find shit on the screen. Anyway, I just ended up talking a bunch about the industry, and I didn't mean to.
No, and I even just think that experience of going into a Blockbuster and like having a selection, having things to touch and look at and engage with in that way too, much like a library, is really important as well. Well, I do want to get into some of what you've just said, because several directors, and I'm so sorry, everybody. Several directors in your book, Deborah Granick, Amy Heckerling, Patricia Cardoso, launched or shaped the careers of major actors. And in the case, like you said, of Julie Dash's film, the beautiful Daughters of the Dust, is what Beyonce styled her iconic multi-platinum opus Lemonade around the imagery, and elevated Black womanhood into kind of a new realm. What did the filmmakers that you interviewed say about the relationship to performance and perhaps finding talent that other people overlooked. Did they mention specific performers specifically, or the process of bringing these performers into their work?
It was probably the most fun I had talking to these incredible directors was when I would speak to a director who was largely responsible for like launching the career of someone we now just think was here always. Um, it's the stories are very different, but they're always fantastic. Like when so the movie that made Ryan Gosling into a star was a movie called Half Nelson, which was his first Oscar nomination, and Ryan Gosling plays a crack addicted middle school teacher. And he's probably 23, 24 when he makes this movie. And the movie was made by a woman named Anna Boden and a man named Ryan Fleck, who were boyfriend and girlfriend when they made this movie. They broke up in their third movie, and they just kept working together. Now they're married to other people, they have kids, and they still make movies together. It's a little bit like the Eurythmics. It's like it's like an ex couple that like decided to work together, keep working together. And so that story was like, I was like, did you know the man was a star the minute he walked in the room? And they were just like, no. We were all like really young and really just trying to figure stuff out, and we were all like kind of working together. Like, and so everybody was everybody sort of saw themselves very much as peers in that. Whereas Patricia Cardoso decides who is going to play the lead in Real Women Have Curves, and a 17-year-old theater kid named America Ferrera walks in the room. And Patricia Cardoso, when I said, what was it like when America Ferrera walked in the room? Patricia Cardoso said, she's like, I knew immediately, I was like, that is a movie star. 17 years old, she's like, that is a movie star. She was right. And so very different reaction, but like Anna Boden sees Ryan Gosling as like someone who's kind of on the same journey as her. Yeah. And maybe because there was such an age difference between Patricia Cardoso and America Ferrera, Patricia Cardoso was like, oh, we're on a rocket to the moon now.
And she saw it immediately.
Yeah. I mean, Amy Heckerling is like very much a New Yorker, like is a little like Lou Reed, is like never impressed by anything, is like kind of cynical. And so whenever I'm like, how'd you know like Paul Rudd was supposed to be the romantic lead in Clueless? Like, and she's like, I don't know. Like, she's like, I think she said something like, he wasn't as cute as the guy who played Christian, but he was about as cute as Donald Faison. And I already had a part for Donald Faison, so like.
And for those of us that are like Clueless devotees, can't imagine anyone but Paul Rudd in that. I mean, it's like, oh, he is it.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of Donald Faison, becomes a movie star because of that movie too. No, it's like, yeah, you can't imagine anybody but Paul Rudd in that role.
No.
And then and that's brilliant casting, is like when the directors who, and that's a big part of movie making, but the directors who just have an eye for that kind of thing, it feels inevitable.
Yeah.
And the truth is, like in most cases, it's impossible to imagine, but Ryan Gosling was one of 100 people that walked in the door. And they chose Ryan Gosling.
Yes. Yeah. And how that then, manifested later on with him being a absolute star in every regard. I'm sorry, I have to nerd out just a little bit.
Yeah.
And my friend Jessica is here. Jessica, where are you? There you are. I know that you'll appreciate this, who's also, very film. I loved, speaking of Amy Heckerling, I'm not giving anything away, you have to read this book, but that great moment where you and Amy Heckerling make the connection between Cher Horowitz and Jeff Spicoli. And this reality that both of these characters in Fast Times at Ridgemont High and Clueless exist with such a way of life, like there isn't anything possibly that will get me down or get into my way. And I just love that, yes, between Cher's failed driving test and Spicoli and how it exists, how did you come up with the questions to get that? I mean, that moment in your book alone, not to mention countless others, but how did you develop these questions?
The most important thing I I had to do, and this was true when I talked to Amy Heckerling and true when I talked to everyone in this book, is you watch all the movies, you read as many pre-existing interviews as you can. You're only human. Of course, you will run out of time at some point. And you say to yourself, you try and put yourself in the shoes of this director. Even though women directors are cruelly overlooked, everybody has to do press for movies. It's part of the job. And so you can believe that when Sherry Springer Berman and her husband Robert Pulcini made American Splendor, they probably got asked 1,000 times, "What's your favorite comic?" and what's your favorite comic book?
Right.
And so I'm like, well, that's something I'm not going to ask them, because they don't need me to ask them the typical questions, particularly because this was for a book which has a kind of eternal quality that a press interview does not. And so Amy Heckerling, I had read enough interviews with Amy Heckerling to know that Amy Heckerling, like, is not Cher Horowitz and does not view herself as Cher Horowitz. And she's like, I was never interested in clothes. I was never interested in makeup. I was barely interested in boys. Like I was not that girl. I made Clueless because I thought someone like Cher Horowitz was fascinating. And I'm like, okay, well, that's interesting, because I'm sure Amy Heckerling has been asked 1,000 times.
Totally.
It was like, oh, were you like Cher Horowitz in high school? An understandable question, but frankly, a boring question. Right. And so when I was curious as to, oh, well, what did you find so interesting about Cher Horowitz? She says, I've always been interested in people who had this incredibly positive, sunny view of life. She's like, because I'm a Jewish New Yorker. I don't have that. And I'm like, and because I had her filmography right in front of me, I could say, oh, like Jeff Spicoli. She's like, yeah. She's like, and that's when she said what I think is the best line in that whole conversation. Cher Horowitz is like 2 parts Jeff Spicoli, 1 part Jane Austen. And like,
So great.
Yeah.
The scene when she's taking her driver's test and the driver instructor is saying, you cannot parallel park. You do not know how to make a turn. You almost killed a pedestrian. You failed. And she said, well, is there somebody else I can talk to? Is there a manager? Like, can't believe that she would possibly fail the driver's test. So this is so present in the whole book, Kevin, but like your ability to bring out these elements in the directors with the questions that you asked were so great.
Let's not forget the genius of that moment, because the driving instructor gets all the good lines in that scene. I mean, that monologue is one of my favorites of the whole movie. You know, and so he's going, you damaged personal property and you nearly killed someone. Offhand, I'd say you failed. And the genius of it is Amy Heckerling cuts in the middle of that speech to Alicia Silverstone, who's just sitting there nodding, going like, uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. And now you're going to tell me I passed, right?
It's so good.
I mean, that's great direction.
Carson, we need to go home and watch Clueless again just for this.
To cut away from the actor who owns the scene to the actor whose job is to sit there and nod at exactly the right moment, like that's what a director does. Yeah.
Oh, so good. Well, this event is so perfect because we are in Women's History Month, and obviously we're just days away from the Oscars. And I have to ask this question as a high school teacher. If you could put one film from your book in front of every high school student in America, what would you choose and why?
Oh, I only get to pick one, huh?
Oh, you can choose more than one.
Okay. I mean, the obvious answer is something like Real Women Have Curves or Clueless, or something that's about kids that are high school aged. Yeah. The less obvious choice is something that, like, now I gotta look and see what's up here. Thank you. I think the films of Ichai Vasherly, who made the Oscar-winning documentary Free Solo, and later made Nyad, starring Annette Bening and Jodie Foster.
Oh, that
Yeah,
was so
it's a great movie. It's a
Yes.
great movie, but like every movie she makes is about people trying to do these impossible
Yes.
things, and so they're all thrilling to do. You know, she made a movie about she made a National Geographic documentary about the kids in Thailand who were trapped in the mine and the rescue effort to bring them out. I mean, it's just like amazing, amazing stuff, and it's all people trying to do impossible things. And so for sheer thrills, like any one of her movies is really important for high school kids to sit down and watch. Oh, I know the answer. Sorry, it took me a minute, but I know the answer. The answer is the Bay Area's own Alice Wu, born in San Jose, lives in San Francisco. Her debut film, The Half of It, 2015 on Netflix, is the greatest teen movie of the 21st century.
Okay. The half of it. There it is.
It is essentially Cyrano de Bergerac, except the lead character, who is a teenage girl and is trying to pair up two kids in her high school class, a boy and a girl, is secretly in love with the other girl.
Oh.
So it's like an LGBTQ Cyrano de Bergerac set in a dying Pacific Northwest Railroad town.
Oh my gosh, the half of it.
The half of it. It's on Netflix.
Hey, you heard it here.
Yeah.
That is great.
Yeah.
Thank you. That is awesome. As we think about the Oscars,
Yeah.
when you think of the Academy Awards historically, what have the Oscars gotten right and mostly wrong about recognizing women in film?
So there is an amazing book about the Oscars, which I'm sure is in this library, called Oscar Wars by Michael Schulman of The New Yorker. And the very first line of that book is, "The Oscars are always getting it wrong." And like from the very beginning, like the Oscars are always getting it wrong. And when people ask me about the Oscars, I say the worst thing the Oscars ever did was putting the word "best" in front of all of the awards, because it, like, of course you take them at their word and you say, well, I guess the thing that wins Best Picture is actually the Best Picture. It never is. But I think there have only been 3 women who have won the Best Director trophy, and the first one was in when was the Hurt Locker? 2013.
Yeah.
Yeah. So only 3, Catherine Bigelow, Chloe Zhao, and Jane Campion. Chloe Zhao nominated again this year, and so that's criminal. First of all, like we can think of 100 examples of movies that should have been Best Director contenders that were directed by women. The way the Oscars view, or at least within the last, I'd say since about 1980, the way the Oscars view the kind of movie that should be a Best Picture winner, because there's almost always a correlation between what wins Best Picture and what wins Best Director. Not as much in the last 4 or 5 years, but for the last like 40 or so years, there's been a correlation between those two things. The Academy voting body has almost always assumed that a movie that wins Best Picture has to sort of declare out loud its importance. It's why comedies don't win Best Picture. It's why genre movies don't win Best Pictures, because what those movies are saying is, let me entertain you. What Saving Private Ryan is saying is, let me impress or inspire you. And so you have to say, let me impress or inspire you or let me teach you something in order to win a Best Picture trophy, which is often linked to who wins Best Director. That's changing, thank God. That, unfortunately, does not benefit women directors, because I think, because at least in my experience, women directors are simply better at painting on a smaller canvas than men are. I think men think in order for a movie to be important, it has to be huge, and I think women just have a better sense of like that's not actually true. I mean, real women have curves this big, and it's hugely important, or Harlan County, USA is one coal mine in East Kentucky, and it's the most important documentary of the 20th century. Like, now, Chloe Zhao, who is this big and speaks in a very quiet voice, really loves huge movies. That's why Nomadland is this big. That's why everything that led up to Nomadland was this big. She likes to paint on a really huge canvas, and good for her. Frankly, we need more women directors who do that. Yeah.
Well, so this is a great segue. A male author writing a book that centers women's experiences in a male-dominated industry. So as you were working on this project, Kevin, how did you think about your own position and positionality in these conversations, shaping the questions, the way that you were engaging with the directors who you worked with?
I was very, very cognizant of who I was. I felt entitled to do. I felt what entitled me to do the project was my level of interest and commitment to the works of these women. That was how I demonstrated that I belonged there and belonged doing it. Philosophically, I believe anyone can write anything, but I did not want to be in the position of saying of even implying that because I am male, and because I have a diligent agent and relationship with editors, somehow I was more entitled to do this project than someone else. But every director in this book had good right to be cynical or doubting or suspicious when I came around. And the way I proved that spending time with me was worth their time, because these are all busy people. These women were all giving me time they didn't have. Like that's what making movies is like. It's a 24/7 job. And so what I made sure I did is with every one of them, I saw every one of their movies. I read everything I could. I knew exactly who they were. And when I asked questions, I was like, I am showing up as someone I am coming dressed to play in my game day uniform. Like, I am, that's how seriously I take your time and your work. And then once I sat down with them, I had a few rules for myself. I said, everything I ask is going to be about them as movie makers. If they want to tell me what it's like being someone's daughter, someone's wife, someone's spouse, they can. Like, I'm certainly, no, I don't want to hear that. I'm not going to say that. But I wouldn't ask a man those questions, so I'm not going to ask them those questions.
Yes.
I would love to, one of these days, to have the experience to interview a male director and say something like, how do you balance work and fatherhood? Like, I would love to do that someday. Like,
Oh, I hope I'm there when you do.
Oh,
I
God,
can't wait to really be part of that.
it would be amazing. And then that question was explicitly forbidden. I made a rule for myself. I'm not allowed to ask that. Couple of times people were like, oh, I was making this movie right about the time I started having kids, blah, 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 and this and that. And I was like, that's cool. I'll talk as much as you want about that. But like, that's not why I'm here. I'm here to speak to you as an artist. And so, and artists have bodies of work and themes they keep coming back to. And that's why when I said to Ichai Vasily, it seems to me that every movie you make is about people doing impossible things. I have the advantage of seeing everybody's movies in a week's time, and they made them over 30 years, so they're not thinking about like what they all have in common. And she said, as pretty much every director, I said, wow, I never thought of it that way. And I understand that. And then she said, but you've seen them all. I said, yes, I've seen them all. That's my job. And she said, I don't think my husband has seen them all.
Yes, and Kevin, that's so great. Yes, the level of commitment, preparation, and investment that you had in the work of these women comes through so beautifully in this book. I will also just say too that while you were speaking, even our middle schoolers present were doing this, which is like the
Oh, that's
highest
cool.
sign
All
of
right.
respect and affirming
All
what you were
right.
saying.
Well, thanks.
I want to ensure that our audience has time to interact
Please.
with you,
Yeah.
and we are so grateful for your insights. We can open up our Q&A, and I think Joanna is going around with a microphone, and hopefully you will not suffer a coughing attack like I have.
By the way, I'd just like to say if someone does not have a specific question, there is a game that I like to play when I was on tour last year for this book, which is if you tell me what your 1, 2, or 3 favorite movies are, I will suggest what your next favorite movie will be, and it will be directed by a woman.
Wow.
I'm glad. I'm glad. Oh, that's cool. Uh-huh. Okay. All right. Hamnet's a bit of an outlier there. None of the other two are about a child dying. But I get the sense if All About Eve and Young Frankenstein are your jam, you are really into that crackly, sparkly dialogue that goes ba 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 ba. You know, you probably like the His Girl Friday kind of. So, the great Nancy Myers, her stuff has that kind of this quality to it. I'm guessing you've seen Something's Got to Give. I've seen Something's Got to Give like 85 times.
Yes.
The lesser known Nancy Meyer movies, Baby Boom, Private Benjamin, The Intern. I don't think The Intern. I think The Intern is a little overlooked, and I think it's kind of weighed down by the level of. I don't think it's particularly well cast. I think everybody feels like it's because it's Anne Hathaway in the business world. It's supposed to resemble The Devil Wears Prada. But if you haven't seen The Intern, I think The Intern's a great movie, and I think it's got that Nancy Myers kind of this quality to it. Also, when Nora Ephron got into directing and was also writing for herself, her first movie as a director is not, she hadn't come into herself as a director yet. It's not like smooth and sophisticated the way Sleepless in Seattle is, but This Is My Life, which is autobiographical, starring Julie Kavner, the voice of Marge Simpson, is an amazing story. It's basically the sequel to Heartburn. Yeah, Heartburn is about her divorce from Carl Bernstein. This Is My Life is about her life as a single mother with 2 kids. The older kid is played by Samantha Mathis as a teenager, and it's got that you would like. Yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. 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 I think that is a very good point. I think in the case of Chloe Zhao, um, it's it's important to look at her entire career and say Chloe Zhao was a self-made person. Chloe Zhao had made 2 amazing movies before Nomadland, and it was those movies that attracted the attention of Frances McDormand. Frances McDormand saw the writer and songs my brother father taught me. I don't remember which it was, and said that's who I want to direct Nomadland. So Chloe Zhao made it happen all by herself. I get what you're saying, though. I mean, I think I think Sofia Coppola is an amazing director and makes movies that are very, very different from her father's. A lot of her movies are about father and daughter relationships, and she has like a famous director as a father. But yeah, sure, sure. Maggie Gyllenhaal is a very bright future as a director. I can't wait to see more of her stuff. Yes, and her father being a director. Yeah, yeah. And she, as someone who like is this like sunny a public persona as she has, her movies are like very dark and twisted, and I really like that. Yeah.
I think they're going to get a microphone. You're going to get a microphone, Kelly.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Um, so I'm a middle schooler, and from a very young age, I've loved filmmaking. My aunt is a screenwriter in LA, so from a very young age, I was always told about, oh, this is how you write stuff, this is directing, and all of these movies and TV shows she's worked on. And recently, yesterday, I've been really into American Horror Story recently, so I'd been watching that, and I was texting her. I was like, oh my goodness, I love like the commentary that's coming from this in like the horror genre. And she was like, not to go all screenwriter on you or whatever. And she started talking to me about all this stuff from the industry and like directing and acting and casting and screenwriting. And I feel like a lot of times, I mean, in a lot of industries, but specifically in filmmaking, a lot of women directors and screenwriters are often in just in life too, but we're often told that like, oh, we have to apologize. You can't go too hard. And Barbie movie
Yeah.
from earlier example. Sorry, I'm going on a tangent, but I feel like we're often told that like you have to apologize for being knowledgeable about your craft. And as somebody who is aspiring to be in the film industry, is there anything that you've learned from having conversations with these directors that they would give advice to a young filmmaker, if that makes sense?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's a really good question. I don't have to tell you this because you know it already, but apologizing is a way of making yourself small. It's a way of like saying, I'm sorry, therefore, what I have to say, think, feel doesn't matter, or it's wrong, or it doesn't belong here. And I think what great directors, particularly the ones that I spoke to in this book, and I apologize for not saying it was the honor of my professional life to do this. Like it was the to to talk to artists who have the kind of obstacles that these women do, and to look at how much great work they made anyway, is just you have to be dead not to be inspired by that.
Yeah.
What they all do, and Barbie is a really good example because I love that movie and I've probably seen it a half a dozen times. Barbie does everything you would think a movie about a beloved doll would do. It's great to look at. The costumes are awesome. It's feminist. It's empowering. It does all of those things. And this is the big and, it's hilarious. Barbie is screamingly funny. And so at some point, Greta Gerwig said, and Greta Gerwig probably could have been like, it's Barbie, man. It's just gotta be pink and feminist. What else do you need? And Greta Gerwig was like, no, 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 no. It's gonna be hilarious too. Yeah. And it's gonna have musical numbers. And it's gonna have like 8 great male actors in it, which is totally unnecessary for a Barbie movie. She did it anyway. Funniest moment in the Barbie movie is when Michael Cera has to jump over the 2-foot fence and can't figure out how, and he's just like walking around the fence like
Alan.
Yeah. So I think that the lesson I think that I learned from all of these women that I would impart to you or anybody who wants to be a filmmaker is start with the thing you want to do and then be like, and it can always be more.
Mm.
It can always be more. Like, don't be satisfied with like, oh, I want to have a strong like female main character. Cool, do that. Don't stop there. Like, do you want her to go to the moon? Have her go to the moon. Do you want it to like the more you push yourself, and challenge yourself, and the better you insist on making every part of what you do, the more people will respond to that. Because the next generation of people like you who will be sitting in the audience watching your thing deserve nothing less.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Callie, I'm taking that in as a 46-year-old woman as well, so thank you for the question. Yeah, I think, yes, we have a couple. You're really getting your steps in, Joanna.
Thank you. I'm curious, did anyone turn you down that
Oh yeah.
want to be in the book?
Oh yeah, lots. And some of them were just, I'm too busy, I'm sorry. And some of them were, I don't do interviews and talk about myself. And then in one or two like sad examples, I had gone 80% of the way towards talking to someone. And this is just an occupational hazard of talking to people in this profession. You know, someone was like, "Oh, my agent said I shouldn't." And unfortunately, like, artists do this sometimes. They don't want to deal with what they perceive as the dirty business of business, and so they hire some attack dog to represent their interests professionally. That person almost always represents their interests badly and charges them too much money for it. And unfortunately, that happened a couple of times. But I overall, like, when I'm being a nice person, I'm really, really satisfied and fulfilled by everyone in this book. And when I'm being not so nice a person, I'm like, I hope the people who turn me down are jealous.
A great life philosophy too, right? I love that. That's great. Samantha.
I was wondering how much
Mm.
Yeah, the economics of movies right now are in a really like weird place because and I'm saying something, this is not, I didn't come up with this. This has been said 100 times before. The sort of middle of movie making has completely disappeared. In other words, you can make a $200 million movie or you can make a $5 million movie. Everything in between is gone. So My Best Friend's Wedding, for example, which is a great movie. Someone would look at that now and they would say, it's too expensive to be an independent film. It's too cheap to be a blockbuster, even though it was a blockbuster. And we're going to pay too much for the star. And if it's about like, and could we do this like, could we make more of our not making this a 6-episode limited series on Hulu or something like that?
Mm.
And that, like, fine, but that's a totally different thing. Like, and then I'm sure you could, but then we wouldn't have My Best Friend's Wedding, and what a shame that would be. I'm sure there's more complicated financial reasons why you can't make a $30 million movie these days. The one I come back to, because I'm not an executive, I'm just a person who likes movies, is, okay, you spend $30 million on My Best Friend's Wedding here in 2026. How do you let the people in this audience know that it exists? Like, where do they find out about My Best Friend's Wedding? Nobody watches television commercials. Nobody listens to commercials on the radio. Like, I don't know, a poster on the train? Like, how does anybody know? TikTok, maybe? Like movie criticism in newspapers and magazines a fraction of what it used to be. So that's a real problem.
Yeah.
I mean, not everybody, I would love for this to be true, but like not everybody is a lunatic like me who's going to sit there and say, oh well, like what did Julia Roberts make, between My Best Friend's Wedding and Aaron Brockovich? I got to go see all of those now,
Mhm. Yeah.
Thank you, Kevin, for all the insights. Have you interviewed filmmakers who made animation movies or any foreign film? Did you?
I yes, originally my ambitions for this book were far larger, and I had a series of directors who did not live in the U.S. that I really admired, that I wanted to talk to. I would have given a vital organ to talk to Mira Nair or Gudadir Chadra or Lynn Ramsey or Claire Denis or Usain Palsy or anyone like that, because they've made like some of the most important movies in my life. Um, and it was sort of clear about 20% of the way in that this was going to be a pretty substantive project, and maybe I could go back to the well with Oxford and do a chapter, a second volume about directors who are not American.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to. I had an interview with the great Canadian director Mary Herron that for length couldn't end up in this book. And so I circled back to her, hat in hand, and said, I'm sorry, but the 30th anniversary of American Psycho is coming out, and you have never really gotten credit as the person who made American Psycho into the modern classic that it is. Maybe we can do something about that. She was really great about it, and she said, sure. And so I ended up interviewing her for Salon on the 30th anniversary of that movie, which was awesome.
Okay, we all heard it here at the Walnut Creek Library, second volume of this text.
God,
we're
one hope.
gonna
I can
hopefully
only
manifest
hope.
that, Kevin.
I can only hope. My editor is a great guy, but like he's an editor, so he's like a hard ass. He's not. He's very diligent and out of the gate not encouraging. So we'll see.
Well,
We'll see.
I'm gonna cross my fingers.
I would love to do this again. Yeah.
I would like to thank Kevin Smokler. I hope you will join me in thanking
Thank you.
this incredible author and like oracle of all things filmed. Despite my coughing attack, our recorded discussion will be posted on Walnut Creek Television or on the Foundation's website, wclibrary.org. And I would like to thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. And then just part by saying we cannot take our libraries for granted. They absolutely need our support every single day. The Walnut Creek Library Foundation has a proven and wonderful track record of effective, successful support from our libraries. We graciously invite you to join us and to become a donor. And we thank you so much for your participation in tonight's program. Thank you so much.
Do we have books?
Yes, I am so sorry. Thank you. Arinda Books is selling Kevin's book out front. And are you willing to sign
Of course I
copies
am.
for
Yeah,
folks?
yeah.
So go ahead and purchase it and get it signed by the amazing Kevin. Thank you so much.